Hello everyone, how are you all doing? Before we start working with AWS services, the first thing everybody needs to understand is the AWS Management Console. In this discussion, we will explore the AWS Management Console Home. When you log into AWS through your browser, the first screen that you see is the AWS Management Console Home or the console dashboard. This page acts as the central control pane for your entire AWS account. So, how do we log into AWS? One option is to log in as the root user, as we saw in the session, setting up account alias for an AWS account and exploring IAM sign-in options. However, logging in as root user is not recommended for regular operations. Instead, there are two preferred alternatives. Logging in as an IAM user, logging in through AWS IAM Identity Center. As of now, AWS recommends logging in through AWS IAM Identity Center more than logging in as a traditional IAM user. We saw how to log in as an IAM user in the session Create IAM Users Groups and Giving Permissions in AWS. We also saw how to log in as a IAM Identity Center user in the session Hands-on with IAM Identity Center, Users, Groups, Permission Sets and Access Portal. In this discussion, we will walk through the different sections of the AWS Console Home, understand what each part does, and learn how it helps us navigate and manage our cloud environment efficiently. By the end of this walkthrough, you should feel comfortable understanding the layout of the console and how to move around AWS services. Before we proceed, I am Hartin Jacob Kanagatotu. I am an author, architect, and tech evangelist. You can learn more about me or even connect with me at linkedin.com/in/Hartin. Let us start with the global navigation bar. This bar you see on top. You will notice that this bar appears on almost every page in the AWS Management Console. It helps us quickly access the services, tools, and other important features in AWS. Let us take a quick look at the key items available in the navigation bar. Let us look at the first item on the navigation bar, which is this AWS logo. At any time, if you click on this AWS logo, it will take you back to the console homepage. For example, consider a scenario where we are working in the IAM dashboard to manage users or permissions. If we want to return to the AWS Management Console Home, we can simply click on the AWS logo at the top left corner of the screen and it will bring us back to the console homepage. Next to the AWS logo, we see Amazon Q, which is AWS's AI-powered assistant integrated into the console. With Amazon Q, you can ask questions about AWS services, get explanations, and receive guidance while working in the console. It helps users find information quickly and navigate AWS more easily. Let us click on it. As we can see from the Amazon Q panel, we can type a question here that is specific to our AWS account. There are also some sample questions available here. List RDS databases without CloudWatch alarms. Chart S3 cost by storage tier last week. Show cost forecast for next billing period. Summarize last month's spending trends. Let us ask a question. Which region is this console currently set to? It is checking and has come up with the answer. Based on your current console context, you are currently set to Canada Central Region, which is CA Central 1. We can see that here. You can see this in your console URL. See, region is CA Central 1 and the region selector in the top right corner of the AWS Management Console. If you need to switch to a different region, you can click on the region selector drop-down in the console header to choose another region. Amazon Q is not just giving us the answer, it is also giving us some useful information to help us navigate the AWS Management Console better. So as you may be aware already, Amazon Q uses generative AI behind the scene. With the help of Amazon Q, it is now much easier to work with AWS Management Console than ever before. Let us close this. Next, we have the services menu represented by this grid icon. When we click this icon, This panel opens, allowing us to browse and access AWS services and applications categorized into different service groups such as analytics, application integration, blockchain, compute, containers, machine learning, satellite, storage. We can click any one of them and see the services that are available under that category, and then click on that service to go to that service. And as we learned earlier, we can click on the AWS logo on the top left corner to get back to our AWS Management Console Home. Next, we have the search bar. The search bar allows us to search for AWS services, features, resources, and documentation within the console. For example, if we type IAM, we can quickly navigate to the IAM dashboard without browsing through the services menu. And as we learned earlier, we can go back by clicking on the logo. We can also type questions here, like what is IAM? So there are different categories here. Services, it will show the services based on our text, or features, or documentation, knowledge articles, marketplace, blog posts, events, tutorials. You can just type your question or type the service that you want to explore, like only IAM, and get to all of these information. And just you can read through them. We also have this option to click on Ask Amazon Q, which will open the Amazon Q panel, where we can ask questions that need understanding of the context of the console, like what we asked before, right? The region, which you cannot find from general documentation. It can be only answered by understanding the context of our current console. Let us close Amazon Q again. Let us clear the search also. Next, we have AWS CloudShell. We can click on this CloudShell icon to open CloudShell. CloudShell provides a browser-based terminal environment that allows us to run AWS CLI commands directly from our AWS Management Console without needing to install any tools on our local machine. It already comes pre-configured with the AWS CLI and common development tools, and it automatically uses the permissions of the user or role we are currently logged in with. This makes it very convenient for running commands, managing AWS resources, and performing quick administrative tasks directly from the browser. Let us run a command. AWS STS get caller identity. Press enter. This command returns information about the identity currently authenticated in AWS. Let us look at the fields in the output. User ID. User ID shows the unique identifier of the identity currently using AWS. In this case, the session belongs to user Hartin, which is the user who logged in into the console. Account. Account is the AWS account ID we are currently working in. Every AWS account has a unique 12-digit account number. Then we have ARN. ARN stands for Amazon Resource Name, which uniquely identifies the identity being used. In our case, it represents a session associated with the user Hartin. Let us try to understand ARN and its parts. As I mentioned earlier, an ARN or Amazon Resource Name uniquely identifies a resource in AWS. This ARN indicates that the identifier is an Amazon Resource Name. Then we have AWS, which is the partition. A partition identifies the AWS partition, such as AWS, AWS CN, or AWS US Gov. In our case, the partition is AWS, which represents the standard AWS commercial region. Then we have the service, which in our case is STS. This represents the service that the resource belongs to, such as EC2, S3, or STS in our case. STS stands for AWS Security Token Service, if you are not aware. After that, we have a empty place here, which is the region. So this space is used to represent the region where the resource is located. For example, US East 1 or Canada Central, etc. Or any of the other regions you see here. However, in this ARN, the region field is empty, which is normal for an STS resource because they are not tied to a specific region. Next, we have account ID, which is the 12-digit AWS account ID that owns the resource. Then we have the resource. This is the specific resource within the service, such as a role, instance, S3 bucket, or an IAM user. In this example, it shows an assumed role provided through the IAM Identity Center. So, this ARN tells us that the user Hartin is currently operating using an assumed role created through AWS IAM Identity Center with administrator access permissions. Let us close the CloudShell. Next, we have the notification icon represented by the bell symbol. We can click on it. It opens the AWS notifications panel, which shows important messages and alerts related to our AWS account and services. These notifications help us stay informed about events such as service announcements, account related alerts, security notifications, operational updates from AWS. In this panel, we can see different sections such as most recent, which displays the latest notifications, user configured, which displays the notifications that we have configured ourselves, AWS managed, which contain the notifications generated automatically by AWS services. Currently, we can see that there are no notifications, which means there are no recent alerts or updates related to this account. AWS also provides a notification center, which allows us to manage how notifications are delivered. Notifications can be sent to email, mobile devices, or chat platforms. We can click on this Go to AWS User Notifications. It opens the AWS User Notification Service, which is also referred to as the Notification Center. This page allows us to view, configure, and manage notifications related to AWS services and our account. We can select a service from the Choose a Service drop-down here. Let us select EC2 for example, and then we can click on Create Notification Configuration. It will allow us to create a notification configuration. We can select the region where this needs to be applied and the parameters. Let us cancel. So as of now, the services for which we can create notification configuration are CloudWatch, EC2, and Health. Let us go back to AWS Management Console Home by clicking on the AWS logo here. Next, we have the Help icon represented by the question mark symbol. When we click this icon, a menu opens that provide quick access to support, support center, repos, documentation, training, getting started, resource center, and even send feedback. Support center allows us to create and manage AWS support cases. Repos is AWS's community forum where users can ask questions and find solutions shared by other AWS users and experts. Documentation provides access to official AWS documentation for services and features. Training links to AWS training and certification resources. Getting started resources center contains guides and resources for beginners learning AWS. Send feedback allows us to provide feedback about AWS console experience. Next, we have the settings icon represented by the gear symbol. When we click on this icon, it opens the current user settings panel. This panel allows us to configure certain preferences for the AWS Management Console interface, allows us to choose the language used in AWS console. By default, it is the browser default, which means the console follows the language settings of the web browser. Then we have visual mode. This allows us to change the appearance of the console interface. We can choose between browser default, light mode, or dark. At the bottom, we also have the See All User Settings, which opens up a page where we can configure additional settings for the AWS console. Here we can configure things such as localization and default region, display settings, which include visual mode, favorites bar display, favorites bar icon size. We can also configure whether to remember recently visited services. Now let us go back to the AWS console home. Next, we have the region selector. AWS operates in multiple geographical regions across the world and allows us to choose which region we are currently working in. Different regions may have different services, pricing, and latency, so selecting the appropriate region is important when deploying resources. Currently, AWS has 39 regions globally, with announced plans to launch 2 additional regions in the future. This number may change by the time you watch this video. Let us cancel that. Next, we have the account menu, which shows information about the AWS account and the identity currently logged in. Here we can see information such as the account ID, which is the unique 12-digit identifier of the AWS account. Account name, the name assigned to the AWS account, which is Sandbox1. Account color, we have not set anything. Federated user, which shows the identity currently logged in. In this case, it indicates that we logged in through the AWS IAM Identity Center and assumed the role administrator access role. We also have quick links to important account level services such as account to manage account settings, organization to manage AWS organization. This is not the management account, right? We have learned about AWS organization and management accounts and all in the session. Multi-account management with AWS organizations. Next, in the user menu, we have the service quotas. Here, we can view and manage service limits. We can select a service such as AWS Cloud Formation, and we can view quotas. And we can even request an increase at account level wherever applicable. Next, we have billing and cost management, where we can monitor and manage AWS costs. At the bottom of the user menu, we also have turn on multi-session support, switch role, and sign out. Turn on multi-session support enables a feature that lets us log into multiple AWS accounts or roles at the same time in the same browser. Normally, AWS allows only one console session per browser. If you log into another account, the previous session is replaced. When we turn on multi-session support, we can sign into multiple AWS identities simultaneously. Each identity opens in its own browser tab with an isolated session. Next, we have a switch role. Switch role allows us to assume another IAM role, which we saw in the session, create IAM users, groups, and giving permissions in AWS. And finally, the sign out button we can use to log out of the AWS Management Console. With this, we have explored the main items available in the global navigation bar of the AWS Management Console. Let us move on to the AWS Console Home dashboard, where we can see widgets that provide quick insights, shortcut to services, and important information about our AWS environment. As we can see, the Console Home dashboard is made up of widgets. Widgets are small panels that display useful information or shortcuts related to your AWS account, such as recently visited, applications, welcome to AWS Health, cost and usage, solutions, explore AWS, security, trusted advisor, latest announcements, recent blog posts. We can also add a new widget by clicking on the add widgets button available here at the bottom or even at the top of the page. We will not add any widgets right now. So let us close this. In this video, we explored the AWS Management Console Home and the main components available in the interface. We looked at the global navigation bar, which allows us to access services, search resources, and use tools like CloudShell, view notifications, access help resources, configure settings, select regions, and manage AWS account information. We also briefly discussed the Console Home dashboard, which uses widgets to provide quick insights and shortcuts related to our AWS account. Understanding the layout of the AWS Management Console is important because most AWS operations begin from this interface. Now that we understand the layout of AWS Management Console, we are ready to start working with AWS services in the upcoming sessions. You can contact me on LinkedIn for attending my future sessions or clearing doubts or just to talk to me. You can read my notes on cloud at cloudrix.com. You can see the recordings of my sessions on cloud at my YouTube channel CloudRix. If you buy my book, please feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn. Bye bye for now and see you all in next class.